Thank you. Okay, could we call this meeting to order, please? It is November 8th. This is the Elbert County Planning Commission. And how we're going to handle this is that we're going to consider it coming back from a recess. Pretty much that's the way we need to keep it. However, there is a situation here in that we need to verify that we have enough individuals to, that we have a quorum for a vote on the next item on our agenda. So with that in place, it is 7:05 p.m. and we are going to start with a roll call, please.
Danny Wilcox.
Here.
Kevin Kirkwood.
Here.
Van Sands.
Here.
Dwayne Owens.
Here.
Eric Carlson. Eric Carlson. Absent. Mike Buck.
Here.
Roger Burton. Roger Burton. Absent. Dee Dee Schott Grace. Dee Dee Schott Grace. Absent. Robert Politik.
Here.
That completes it.
Okay, thank you. At this time, where we ended the last meeting, we had completed the, we had covered the PUD and the preliminary plat, and we had voted on each of those. Okay, we had a split vote. So, pardon me? So where we're at now, we had completed those two parts of our process, of our hearing. Now we are going into the EC West service plans. So I'll forego describing how we go about it. However, the first part of this will be that the applicant or our staff presents their part, and of course then you are next, and then we go to citizen comments, then we'll go to our input up here, okay, and then a vote. So if we could please, Mark or whoever is covering it.
Great, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Mark Denreader, Director of Community and Economic Development. Here to present a staff presentation on the EC West Metropolitan District Service Plans. The request tonight, the applicant is proposing to create EC West Metropolitan Districts 1 through 5, a commercial district, an overlay district, and a water and sanitation district. Here's some details on the applicant. The landowner is Colorado Ranch and Land Holdings. The applicant rep is Jim Yates. The location of the property is just southeast of the intersection of County Road 29 and County Road 174. Here's a map. You can see that there. County Road 174 is identified along with County Road 29. The area shaded in that tan yellow, that is the EC West project, and this location is in the northwest quadrant of Elbert County. Hearing dates, here we are with the Planning Commission, started on November 7th. Today is November 8th, and the Board of County Commissioners will hear this service plan before them on January 10th of 2024. Referrals, there are two as it relates to service plans. One would be with Butler Snow. This was our legal analysis looking at the statutory requirements. So that's a consultant, and we also have Anderson Analytics, another consultant that looks at the financial review of the application, so it has been reviewed and really looking at the financial standards as it pertains to these various service plans. The review criteria in the zoning regulations, it states that these type of applications with service plans, they need to be reviewed based on criteria that's outlined in state statute. The Board of County Commissioners shall disapprove the service plan unless evidence satisfactory to the board of each of the following is presented, and I'll go through these now. So A is there is sufficient existing and projected need for organized service in the area to be serviced by the proposed special district. B, the existing service in the area to be served by the proposed special district is inadequate for present and projected needs. Moving on to C, as part of the criteria, the proposed special district is capable of providing economical and sufficient service to the area within its proposed boundaries. And D is the area to be included in the proposed special district has or will have the financial ability to discharge the proposed indebtedness on a reasonable basis. Additionally, we have to look at the Colorado Revised Statutes that says the Board of County Commissioners may disapprove the service plan if evidence satisfactory to the board of any of the following at the discretion of the board is not presented. A, adequate service is not or will not be available to the area through the county or other existing municipal or quasi-municipal corporations, including existing special districts, within a reasonable time and on a comparable basis. That's A. B, the facility and service standards of the proposed special district are compatible with the facility and service standards of each county within which the proposed special district is to be located, and each municipality which is an interested party under Section 32-1-2041. C, the proposal is in substantial compliance with a master plan adopted pursuant to Section 30-28-106 Colorado Revised Statutes. Moving on to D, the proposal is in compliance with any duly adopted county, regional, or state long-range water quality management plan for the area. And E, the creation of the special district will be in the best interest of the area proposed to be served. The Planning Department recommends that the Elbert County Planning Commission find the following. Number one, there is sufficient existing and projected need for organized service in the area to be serviced by the districts. And number two, the existing service in the area to be served by the district is inadequate for present and projected needs. And number three, the districts are capable of providing economical and sufficient service to the area within their proposed boundaries. Number four, the proposal is compatible with existing and allowable land uses in the surrounding area. And number five, the area to be included in the district does have or will have the financial ability to discharge the proposed indebtedness on a reasonable basis. And number six, adequate service is not or will not be available to the area through the county or other existing municipal or quasi-municipal corporations, including special districts, within a reasonable time and on a comparable basis. And number seven, the facility and service standards of the districts are compatible with the facility and service standards of the county within which the districts are located and each municipality which is an interested party under Section 32-1-2041 Colorado Revised Statutes. And number eight, the proposal is in compliance with a master plan adopted pursuant. This is Section 30-28-106 Colorado Revised Statutes. And two more, number nine, the proposal is in compliance with any duly adopted county, regional, or state long-range water quality management plan for the area. And finally, number 10, the creation of the districts will be in the best interests of the area proposed to be served. Those are the findings, and the recommendation. We, the Elbert County Community and Economic Development Department, recommend approval of the 8 metro districts. So that concludes my brief presentation, and next we have Graham Anderson from Anderson Analytics, who will present as a staff consultant on this application. Pardon us just a little moment here to change computers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and I thank the chair and all the members of the board here. Going to try not to make this too much of a marathon presentation, but essentially my goal here is to walk you through this. It's undoubtedly dense, not just the bond plan, but all of the language. I remember the first time that I, in my career, ever saw a bond packet like what was put in these proposed service plans. I just remember the pit in my stomach. So it's undoubtedly dense. Again, my name is Graham Anderson. I'm the senior analyst with Anderson Analytics. I'm actually not the one in charge. I don't take complaints. I'm the grumpy one as well. But we provide a fairly wide range of technical, analytical, and advisory services in the areas of public finance, applied economics, and public policy to local governments in Colorado, as well as a couple of other states. We also work with private sector and nonprofit clients. Obviously, one of these areas is special districts, Title 32 districts like we're looking at today, as well as the rest of the alphabet soup, URAs, DDAs, SIDs, LIDs, et cetera. And their utilization for bond and other financing for economic development and land use development. Again, we were engaged by Elbert County along with Kim Crawford and Courtney DeGuardi from the law firm of Butler Snow. They're really two of the most knowledgeable and respected attorneys in public finance and special districts. And I think this proposal has probably had more third-party review than certainly occurs in a lot of other jurisdictions. So the reason why the title is this way is there's really 3 service plans here, although we have a grouping of 6 right here, metro districts numbers 1 through 5 in the commercial metro district. Just as a side note, a commercial metro district isn't a different type of metro district under law. That's just nomenclature here on the applicant's part to kind of indicate which one is which. The service plans call these the infrastructure districts. It's 6 proposed districts to allow for flexibility in development and bond issuance phasing. I'll break a lot of these points out a little bit further later on. The infrastructure districts are anticipated to utilize general obligation bond financing to help fund eligible public improvements by the districts. General obligation bonds means bonds that are backed by a pledge of property taxes. There are other types of bonds as well that I'll get to that may and are paid just by the developer, but general obligation bonds obviously are paid by property owners primarily via property taxes. The proposed service plans for these 6 infrastructure districts establish a proposed service plan debt limit of $289 million. So that would be the maximum amount of bonds or other debt that these 6 districts in aggregate could issue. So if one district issues $100 million in bonds, that basically lowers the scoreboard for other one. It doesn't stack on top of each other. The service plans also establish a mill levy cap, a maximum property tax for these districts. I'll break this down a little bit further later. But basically, it's 65 mils that's adjustable for legislative changes in the method of calculating assessed value, so that revenues are, quote, neither diminished nor enhanced. Historically, and really in practice, that means that the mill levy cap is adjustable if the assessment rate is lowered over time. So, for example, at 65 mils at 7.15%, you adjust that to the assessment rate of 6.765, that's 68.7 mils. The proposed service plans also would establish a maximum 40-year debt levy imposition term. So the debt levy that goes to pay for the bonds, the maximum term of that would be 40 years. That essentially serves as a feature to help protect future property owners, really to kind of limit the risk of authorizing a multi-phase bond financing plan as is proposed here. The debt levy is anticipated at 55 mils adjustable, and the operations and maintenance levy is anticipated at 10 mils adjustable. Now, the operations and maintenance levy revenues from the infrastructure districts are just paying for the operations and maintenance of the infrastructure districts. They're not going over to the overlay district or the water and sanitation district. As we covered last night, in addition to district admin costs, would be operations and maintenance of the public improvements to be owned by the districts. In practice, that also can mean building a capital replacement reserve for the districts as well.
Can you say that last part again?
In practice, the 10 mils could help to build a capital replacement reserve for them. Yeah. I didn't really think this presentation through when I was figuring that this would be the executive summary, but I've got two new and I guess they're somewhat technical points here. I'll just plow right through them so we don't have to worry about it. The proposed service plans also would authorize what's called an abatement mill levy. An abatement mill levy, if you've seen your property tax bill, you've probably seen the school district's abatement levy broken out, but a lot of local governmental entities have an abatement levy. What that is every year for every property taxing entity, the treasurer and the assessor certifies to those property taxing entities the amount of property taxes that were abated or refunded as a result of most commonly property tax value appeals. It can also be because of clerical errors and things like that. Abatement levies, just by the nature of their definition, are usually quite small, like tenths or thousandths of a mil. Just for example, the county's abatement levy this year, I believe, is 0.011 mils, so it raises like a whopping $5,000. I do want to note, this is something that the Butler team also noted, that an abatement levy isn't something that we often see authorized in a developer-established Title 32 district. There are a lot of fire protection districts, there are a lot of park and recreation districts, other types of Title 32 districts that have an abatement levy. But if you're wondering why the applicant was proposing this in these service plans, I would actually direct you to them. I don't want to speculate, but there are a lot of good reasons that I could come up with. So switching gears, the anticipated bonds to be issued by these infrastructure districts won't just be backed solely by the property taxes. They're also anticipated what's called a facility fee to be paid by the home builder when they pull the building permit. They anticipate it to be about $7,400 and adjustable for a rate of inflation in the future. And really what that serves to do is oftentimes in general obligation bonds, we have a technical issue of you build something, and then it takes a year to get on property tax rolls, and then you've inherently got another year delay before you realize those revenues. So it's kind of like 2 years worth of property tax revenues on a housing unit that would be paid by the home builder, and that just technically helps the bonds from a bond sizing point of view. Now finally here, this is probably the last difficult point, hopefully, that I'll be getting through. The service plans have a section in there you might have noted called special assessments, and so I just wanted to walk through this specifically of what that would authorize. So one, with prior written consent of the county, special assessments may be imposed on developer-owned property only to help finance public improvements via the establishment of what's called a special improvement district. This is something that's allowable under Title 32. The language says that those special assessments must be paid off before any certificate of occupancy of any unit or structure there. So this would not be, by definition, an ongoing special assessment on homeowners or property owners. Now, you're probably wondering, why would a developer impose a special assessment on themselves? It kind of seems like it's money out of one pocket into another pocket, and then out of the pocket. Really, what this structure is it's a potential tool, almost kind of a conduit to tax-exempt municipal bond markets. It's actually a rather creative structure that we started seeing in 2021 to raise early-stage capital. Municipal bonds have a tax-exempt rate, so if you own a municipal bond, it's exempt from federal taxation, and thus they have lower interest rates, and it's more favorable to the borrower. Municipal bonds can only be used for eligible public improvements, as I'll get to in just a minute. The total anticipated public improvement cost for these districts is substantially higher than the proposed debt authorization. So that's really the reason for that special assessment section in the service plans. So this is kind of the second component of the service plans. It's a different service plan here for the overlay metropolitan district. Again, there's no special definition of an overlay metro district in statute. This is kind of just nomenclature here. But this metropolitan district would be formed to perform covenant enforcement and design review in lieu of an HOA. That's something that Title 32, a provision in Title 32 that was added about a decade ago. And as well, importantly, these districts are anticipated to own, operate, and maintain certain park and recreation, open space, landscaping, and storm drainage improvements in the community. So there would be no annual HOA fee. This overlay district is in lieu of an HOA. It's the same structure that was utilized in Independence. It's really a rather unique utilization of metropolitan districts. I don't see this very often, but instead of having an HOA board, you have a governmental entity which has regular public elections, a board that's literally accountable to the community and the eligible electors there. No debt authorization for the overlay district. They couldn't issue bonds. The operations mill levy cap would be 15 mills, adjustable at the 7.15 and 29% assessment rates. An abatement mill levy is also authorized here. The service plan language indicates that overlay district may impose an operations fee of $25 a month on builder-owned lots as well. And then finally, this district may establish a system of fees, rates, tolls, charges for service, for example, for the swimming pool or the community center. And that's just to cover cost of service. In Colorado, government fees constitutionally, statutorily, may not be used for general revenue-raising purposes. They have to be established for a very specific purpose to essentially net out the cost of the service or the improvements provided. This actually may address some of the questions from last night as well. So the park and recreation and community amenities that would be financed by the infrastructure districts, they would be owned and operated by the overlay district, are public improvements, because the overlay district, unlike an HOA, is a public entity and it can only operate and construct and fund public improvements. So all of the open space and park and rec improvements would be open to use by the general public. And the developer indicates that overlay district amenities are anticipated to include a community center, probably with a swimming pool, gathering rooms, educational spaces, as well as the trails, parks, and open space. So that goes back to the fee authorization. It might be a swimming pool fee or something like that. Now, the third Title 32 district or category of districts that we're looking at here is the EC West Water and Sanitation District. This district is anticipated to impose and collect tap and facility fees paid by the home builder or the commercial builder at construction to fund and pay special revenue bonds issued by the district to fund eligible water and sanitation public improvements. The proposed revenue bond authorization amount is $140 million. This is revenue bonds, not general obligation bonds. There's no mill levy authorization here, and in fact, there would be no overlap with the infrastructure district, so it's not even technically feasible for them to establish a mill levy. The financial plan and the service plan language indicates that the anticipated tap and facility fees per residential unit to be paid by the builder would be $52,000. And this is on the commercial building side. I asked where that figure came from. It's just an estimate based off of tap sizes. So, in reality, those tap fees may be further tiered or based off of tap size, et cetera. Now, this is another example of developer-paid tax-exempt financing, again, for access to municipal bond markets and the associated interest rates. Absent this, of course, the developer would have to finance that privately with commercial loan at a higher interest rate, as well as equity financing as well. And of course, equity financing to invest in real estate development, you'd be looking at 20-25% rate of return rather than a 6% interest rate. Of course, that $52,000 does get capitalized. It's kind of into the cost of the home, but it would still have to be paid if you had those residential units in the community built there in the first place, just kind of on a philosophical level, I guess. The second thing that the Water and Sanitation District is anticipated to do is to provide ongoing water and sanitation services to the development in this community. And water and sewer service charges on the residential and commercial customers there would be used to finance maintenance and operations of the district. Again, building up a capital replacement reserve as well as ongoing operations. The utility rate study and the financial plan and the service plan language indicates that the anticipated base monthly water service rate would be $100 per residential customer, 65 potable, 35 for irrigation. That would be tiered by usage. I have that table later on. And anticipated flat monthly sewer service rate of $60 per customer. So thanks for bearing with me. I know that was a very dense executive summary of sorts. On this slide, I've summarized the engineer's preliminary opinion of probable cost, so the estimated public improvement costs to be funded, or at least eligible to be funded by the districts. About $408 million in total direct costs. That includes water and sanitation as well as roads and park and rec. That's everything there. I've also combined the soft costs. Soft costs are design, engineering, et cetera, et cetera. Just as a rule of thumb, I would usually go about a third of direct costs for soft costs, so that looks like a reasonable estimate. Then very properly, it includes contingency as well. So that totals $637.6 million approximately. There are two things from this that I would highlight, or at least that popped out to me. The first was that first line, which is the off-site road improvements and traffic signals costs, $57.3 million in estimated hard costs. Only it doesn't include the soft costs as well, so if you include soft costs and contingency, that would be a little bit higher. I asked the applicant, where did that figure come from? Because $57 million is higher than the county's total annual budget. And so they're very kind to provide this graphic to me, and I really want to emphasize, because this is not included in the service plans, this is preliminary and subject to change as the final filings and the plats are engineered. And there is a lot of discussion about that last night, and it's subject to final approval by the county. But this was the thinking that went into the preparation of that $57.3 million off-site road improvements and traffic signals. And that just popped out to us because we usually don't see an off-site public improvement cost that extensive. That's rather regional there. And if you have more questions about that, I'm not an engineer, so direct them to the applicant. The other thing that I would highlight here, I've alluded to this before, is that the estimated public improvement cost, almost $638 million, exceeds the total proposed debt authorization amounts of the districts. The infrastructure districts are proposed to have $289 million in general obligation debt authorization, and the water and sanitation district $140 million. Now, if you compare that, the water and sanitation improvements, total public improvement cost estimate is about $261 million, and then all the other improvements, infrastructure districts, excluding water and sanitation, $376 million. So that's one of the reasons I would presume, for example, for that special assessment authorization in the service plan, because there is a gap here between what could be financed solely by the bonds of these districts and the total public improvement costs. I really want to highlight this. This is in the text of the service plans. Improvements not funded by the infrastructure districts or the water and sanitation district shall remain the responsibility of the developer of the property. The county is not responsible for assuming any of these costs for design, acquisition, construction, completion, installation of these improvements. So the burden is ultimately on the developer. Funding of public improvements, the service plans and the financial plan anticipate that developer advances for funding of capital improvements would be utilized and then repaid from bond proceeds to the extent available. So really that's the developers exposed there basically. The financial plan, the service plans also anticipate that there will be phased financing and construction of improvements. This is a large project, and as they've indicated, there are a lot of different planning areas. So it does kind of make sense, certainly makes sense to phase your construction as well as the financing of the public improvements. Certainly some of them would presumably need to be financed up front, like core water and sanitation improvements, but things like roadways on parks and trails certainly could be and presumably would be phased. This is just a reiteration of the proposed debt authorization and this total application. Infrastructure districts, again, aggregate $289 million. General obligation, debt authorization. Water and sanitation district, $140 million in revenue bonds. The overlay district, no debt authorization, and 40-year maximum debt levy imposition term. I should indicate that some water and sanitation improvements could potentially be funded by the infrastructure district's bonds as well. That would really be at the best judgment of the districts when they issue bonds and undergo financing and construction of improvements. The proposed mill levy authorization here, I've kind of broken this out a little bit more. Again, it's adjustable for legislative changes in the method of calculating assessed value. The base year language in the service plans is 2019. The reason for that is because that establishes the 7.15% residential assessment rate and the 29% commercial assessment rate, which technically remain the permanent assessment rates under state statute. So this is kind of just really for ease of reference for a future reader to have those base year, have the mill levy cap be at the statutory base years going forward. So 65 mills comprised of the 55 bond and 10 mill operation, 15 mills for the overlay district. That would equal 80 mills. If you were to adjust that to tax year 22 payable this year, property taxes for residential, what you would do is take 80 mills, multiply that by the 7.15, and then divide by 6.95, as that was the residential assessment rate last year. That would be 82.302 mills. If you were to adjust that to residential for this year, 6.765%, that would be 84.552 mills. Second thing I would highlight here, this is a little bit technical. The service plan would authorize the bond levy, the bond levy to be something that's called limited convertible to unlimited, which means that the bond levy could be adjusted higher if necessary to make the required bond payments once the outstanding bond total is less than 50% of the pledged district's total assessed value. So in the financial plans projections, that would be year 33 and after. This is a fairly common provision. It's not a universal provision, but it's a fairly common provision in many metropolitan district service plans that utilize general obligation financing. The reason why that's kind of convoluted, the less than 50 ratio, is essentially so that this would only trigger potentially in the very latter years of the bond term, so that there's really no potential for a developer or a developer-controlled or initiated district to use some kind of trickery. So it's not going to trigger in year 5 or year 10. In my career, I've never, in practice, seen convertible to unlimited levy actually convert. Doesn't mean that it can't or couldn't happen, which goes to another side thought here as well. If this would only trigger in year 33 plus, that gives the districts a lot of runway to do some financial planning if, goodness forbid, there were to be some challenges with the bonds. Independence has this, but actually didn't pledge it to their bonds. So you don't have to pledge it to their bonds. It's something that makes, or it can help bonds be more marketable, or to sell them at a more favorable interest rate to the districts. So here I've broken out the proposed mill levy authorization. This is tax year 22 payable this year, so what most of us paid in the spring or the summer. The reason why I don't have 23 payable, 24 is the existing taxing entities are yet to certify their levies. They will do that in December. So the existing taxing entities there, of course, the county, Elizabeth School District, the county library district, Elizabeth Park and Recreation District will be included once the property is subdivided. This is a provision in Title 32 that if you have a large agricultural parcel that's within a park and recreation district, and that's exempted from a park and recreation district's mill levy. But once the parcels subdivide, then they would be automatically included in Elizabeth Park and Recreation District. I just highlight that if anybody looks up these parcels on the assessor's website. And then in the proposed project area, there's coverage by 2 different fire protection districts. Basically on the north part, it's Rattlesnake Fire, and on the south part, roughly, it's Kiowa Fire Protection District. I did ask, for more explanation from the applicant about fire protection. They've indicated, and this is in the packets, that there are will-serve letters, and they've indicated that those districts are prepared to grow, and with the expanded property tax base, et cetera. So those are the existing entities. EC West proposed at the residential adjusted levy, 82.302 mils. So if you're in the Rattlesnake Fire, that's about 158.2 mils. If you're in the Kiowa Fire part, that would be about 156.8 mils. And again, there's no annual HOA fee. Oftentimes, when we're looking at these proposals, we look at the HOA fee in combination with the proposed special district mill levy, because those both impact quite literally mortgage qualification and housing affordability. So I've summarized here the residential metropolitan districts in Elbert County, just to give you some context of where that 157 to 158 mills would slot in. Gold Creek Valley, Legacy Village have the highest mill levies. Those are in the town of Elizabeth, so they were approved by the town of Elizabeth, I believe, rather than Elbert County Board of County Commissioners. Then there's Spring Valley Ranch. And you'll note that this proposal would slot in just a little bit below Independence here. That's actually because Independence also authorizes 65 and 15 mills.
I don't know.
But their base year is the 7.96% assessment rate rather than the 7.15% assessment rate. Here I've provided an example of proposed residential property tax bill. Again, tax year 22, payable 2023. So if you had a home that was with market value of $600,000, you apply the assessment rate of 6.95%, this would be the property tax. So the total existing entity is about $3,100. And then EC West proposed about $3,400. And if you look at the overlay district there at the 15.432 mils, that kind of gives you a picture of if you're comparing an HOA fee versus an overlay district, so about $640. So the total proposed property tax at those mill levies would be about $6,500 to $6,600, no annual HOA fee. If you have a home with a market value of about $600,000. As commercial development here is also anticipated, I've summarized the commercial metropolitan districts in Elbert County. Really, there's just two. There's Summit Park Metro District, and then there's the Walmart at Wild Point, Summit Park, and Prairie View. I believe they're in different school districts. So there are not a lot of commercial metropolitan districts that have been approved to date in Elbert County, but I just wanted to provide this for context. And if you're a commercial tenant, this summarizes what your example proposed commercial property tax would be. If you have market value of $250 per square foot, and that's based off of the average anticipated market value that's in the financial plans and the bond plans. Existing entities would be about $550 a square foot, and then for EC West, $580 a square foot. Now, of course, if you have, say, a restaurant that's worth $500 or has a market value of $500 a square foot, then you would double this. So I did ask the applicant about the anticipated commercial mill levy load. They did indicate that, as shown in the financial plans, they've shown the maximum possible commercial mill levy for the districts, and the levy tolerance of any tenants or commercial owners would be judged at the time that those projects come along. The commercial uses, I'll indicate later, is about 5% of the proposed financing capacity here. So I'm going to jump into our review of the financial plan. This is the key question, really the reason why we are engaged here, and this is based off of one of the statutory and one of the county's review and approval categories. I've kind of rephrased it from that. This is basically the way that we ask it. Does the financial plan demonstrate that the districts have the projected financial capacity to issue and pay off the full proposed debt authorization amount? Now, the statutory language uses the word reasonably. Obviously, a financial plan is a projection, and so that's kind of where we came in. Are the assumptions as well as the projections, et cetera, reasonable, or are they unreasonable? They are ultimately reasonable, and I'll summarize these over the next couple of slides. So what are the driving variables and assumptions that we look for in the financial plan? There's basically two sides of it. One side is the projection of the revenues available to pay the debt, the bonds, and the other side is the bond financing assumption. So on the revenue side, what's the projected development schedule, absorption and build out? In practice, when these types of special district bonds are issued, really the core risk for a bondholder is build out risk. If you're issuing bonds before or during construction, at any point before full build-out, that's kind of the biggest risk for if you're a bondholder. Second here, what are the projected property values? Are they reasonable and consistent with the uses anticipated and the valuations within the county? Assumed inflation in property values, that is an underwriting parameter. As we're all aware, property values go up over time, so it is appropriate to underwrite with a certain level of inflation in property values. And then what's the anticipated mill levy and other fees, when and how long? And on the bond financing assumption side, what's the assumed interest rate, aka the coupon rate on the bonds? I'll probably use the term coupon rate, but that comes from back in the days when you had a bond, and if you wanted to get your monthly payment, you had to clip or cut out a coupon at the bottom of it and mail it to whoever administered it, and then they'd send you your monthly payment. So that's where the word coupon rate came from. Second here, what's the bond structure? Basically, what are the anticipated repayment schedule in terms, particularly in regard to any type of mandatory repayment of the principal before the final year. Debt service coverage ratio, this is usually a very important underwriting parameter when you're issuing bonds. Debt service coverage ratio means the ratio of the revenues that you have to pay debt service versus the debt service payment you have to make. So if I owe $100 on bonds and I have $200, then I have a debt service coverage ratio of 2.0 times. If I owe $100 and I have $120, then that's a debt service coverage of 1.2 times. Further along, any reserve fund requirements, issuance costs, and timing and phasing. So this table summarizes the build-out schedule and the anticipated property values and the applicant's proposed financial plan. 2,850 residential units, market value on average among all of those about $607,000 in current valuations. I did ask the applicant, what was the thinking going into this anticipated build-out schedule? So I'll do my best to kind of summarize because they gave me a very thoughtful answer. They indicated that this anticipated build-out schedule and phasing was looked at from what they called an amenity perspective. So traditional detached uses like 50-foot, 60-foot, that's kind of consistent with what's already in the market. And when you build those communities, they kind of stand on their own. And so once you kind of have that backbone, as well as you have community amenities like the trails, swimming pool, the community center, once those start to go in, then smaller and attached product tends to do a bit better. It kind of fills out the community. So, of course, smaller product as well would be new to the Elbert County market. That was kind of the justification for in those middle years when you have a greater number of units being delivered. It's basically because it would be delivering units for a different market that really doesn't have access to the Elbert County market. On the commercial side, I should indicate that in the financial plan, the commercial uses are projected to contribute approximately 5% of the bonding capacity. So it's, at least not in our eyes, this isn't something that was just added in there to juice the numbers. There is good thinking behind it. The applicant indicates that there's an initial retail or commercial area anticipated for retail F&B uses, perhaps educational uses. I think you saw a lot of that last night. They assumed a market value of $250 a square foot. I would say that if they're anticipating retail and F&B types of uses, as they indicated, $250 a square foot would be quite conservative. I personally would probably run that at $350, but for example, a restaurant could be $500 or $600 a square foot. And then the applicant indicated that the second commercial area, the specific uses are not yet established, and so running $250 a square foot is probably a happy, actually probably a fairly conservative assumption there. I'll also indicate here, and I'm going to jump into this on the next slide as well, the assumptions in terms of the annual inflation in these property values. Some of these, the financial plan was run at assumed 3% annual inflation until delivery. Some of these were run at 2% annual inflation until delivery. I think that if our property values were only going up 2 or 3% a year, we'd be rather happy from a property tax payer perspective. And after delivery of those units, this is really one of the key underwriting parameters for municipal bonds. The proposed financial plan anticipates, after construction of residential units, 6% biennial inflation in residential property values. Then after construction of commercial uses, 2% biennial inflation in commercial property values. The reason for this, since about 2019, it's become more common for special district bonds to be underwritten with 6% biennial inflation. Prior to that, 2% or sometimes 4% biennial inflation was the norm. I'll indicate that one of the key things that changed around that was the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment, as well as certainly broader awareness of the strength of the housing market and the rising property values in the Colorado market. Now, 6% is a more aggressive underwriting assumption. There have been several bond issuances this year that have only featured 2% residential inflation underwriting. I have a graph for you on the second slide in this context. 2% biennial inflation on the commercial side, that's the prevailing underwriting standard. That's obviously conservative in the context of long-term CPI inflation. And actually, recently I had a client who asked me to stop running 2% biennial on the commercial side and run it at what I actually think would be the growth in commercial market values. And so we did an analysis. It was more of a statewide analysis of what's the appreciation in commercial property values going back 30 to 40 years. And really, it's about roughly the same as for single family. I was running that at 8-9% biennial on the commercial side. So 2% for commercial is conservative. Now, this graph here summarizes the historical home value appreciation in Elbert County. It's the All Transactions Housing Price Index from the Federal Housing Finance Agency. So the benchmark in the financial plan is 6% biennial, which equates to 2.96% annual. And then in those little tables above the graph, I've indicated what the 40-year, 30-year, 20-year, and 10-year historical annual appreciation. So if you look at the 40-year and the 20-year, 20-year had a bad decade, the housing crisis and Great Recession, and a good decade the past 10 years. That was about 4% annual. And then if you go to another, the 40-year, which includes the 1980s, which was a very challenging time as well, that was 4.4%. So really that in municipal bonds, general obligation special district bonds here, by underwriting them at a more conservative rate of property value appreciation than has been seen historically, that's kind of one of the real safety features for a bondholder there. If that kind of makes sense. So these are the general obligation bonds, aka property tax bonds, anticipated to be issued by the infrastructure districts, or at least this is the debt plan shown in the financial plan. The table that I have here, don't worry if you don't absorb all of this right now, but it's called a sources and uses table. You'll see sources and uses tables a lot in bond packets, and basically what it is you look at the sources of funds, which is the amount of bonds that you sell, as well as if you have a refunding, you could be using the debt service reserve from the bonds that you're refunding as a source, et cetera. Then on the bottom are the uses of those proceeds. So there are issuance costs, there are sometimes capitalized interest, there can be debt service reserve fund requirements. So it's not a one-to-one when you issue $289 million in bonds. You don't just get $289 million in proceeds. If you look at that line, net proceeds for eligible costs, the $289 million would yield, at least in the financial plan shown, about $258 million in net proceeds for eligible public improvement costs. Now, the second thing I would highlight here, and I'll summarize this a little more easily on the next slide, what counts towards the service plan debt limit. So when you initially issue bonds here, the par amount of bonds, the total amount of bonds that you issue, would fully count towards the service plan debt limit. But when you issue refunding bonds, oftentimes the refunding component of it does not count towards the service plan debt limit. It's just the, quote, new money proceeds from any kind of refunding issuance that would count towards the debt limit. And the reason for that is that really it's kind of in everybody's best interest. If you can refund your bonds at a lower interest rate, it's more advantageous from the district's perspective, from taxpayers' perspective, et cetera. So if you're just purely refunding existing bonds at a lower interest rate, that would not count towards the service plan debt limit. But if you have additional new money proceeds from that, that would count towards it, which I've hopefully kind of illustrated a little bit better on this table. So what's shown in the financial plan, there are two bond issuances. The initial one would be refunded 10 years later to get to the 40-year bond term. So it's the full par amount from the series 2028, the first one, that would count. And then for the refunding and new money, it would just be the new money proceeds. So the refunding amount and the cost of issuances would not count to it. So the proposed financial plan for the infrastructure districts demonstrates just over $289 million, which exceeds just a little bit the service plan debt limit. Now, multiple project phases and bond issuances are anticipated, so the financial plan shows essentially just one series of bond issuances backed by the entire development in that table that I showed as what's often called a numerical plan demonstration of the district's projected financing capacity. Now, they could show 6 or 8 of these, and we'd basically be to the same conclusion in terms of the demonstration of the debt amount. So that's really the reason for the numerical plan there, so that we don't have 500 pages in the financial plan instead of 50 pages. I'm going to break this down a little bit slower. This is really a reiteration of that sources and uses table. The financial plan for the infrastructure districts anticipates a first bond issuance in 2028, which would be at year 3 of the 15-year build-out. These bonds would be 30-year term and unrated because they would be issued prior to full build-out. The bond par amount, that's the amount of bonds issued from this issuance, shown in the financial plan, is just over 178 million. And then you deduct the costs of issuance. So capitalized interest is when you issue bonds and you basically can't make the payments in the first couple of years, you can issue additional bonds and then use the proceeds from that to apply towards the interest payments. Municipal bonds can't have more than 36 months. The financial plan here is sized to 15 months, and that's just kind of a result of the technical sizing for what they're trying to show here off of a 15-year build-out. These bonds do also anticipate a debt service reserve fund. That would be what's shown would be the maximum allowable debt service reserve fund. Also issuance expenses, that's like bond counsel, the preparation of the financial projections to include in the bond offering statement, market and absorption studies to be included in the bond offering statement, municipal advisor, et cetera. Then the underwriter's discount is the compensation to the investment banker for underwriting and marketing and selling the bonds. They're shown at $20 per $1,000 of bonds sold. That's a common, that's pretty much a universal underwriter's discount for this particular type of unrated special district bonds. 30-year term, so a final maturity shown in December of 2058. And then the financial plan anticipates 10 years later, these would be fully refunded by another, refunding a new money bond series. That line there indicates that the 178 million counts towards the proposed service plan debt authorization amount of 289 million. These are the assumed bond parameters and features shown for the Series 2028 Infrastructure District bonds in the financial plan. They assume a 5% annual coupon rate, 30 years unrated. They're sized at a 1.0 times stabilized annual debt service coverage ratio. I've mentioned this before. It assumes 6% biennial inflation of residential market values, and it shows and it's sized at a debt levy of 55 equivalent mills on the residential and commercial property, and it would be discharged in 2058. Actually,
I decided to not share with you this.
Please note, if you're on the phone, if you could mute, thank you.
I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if they were trying to correct me here. But the bonds, the 2028 bonds are sized and shown in the financial plan. If they weren't refunded, they would be fully paid off in 2058, along with a surplus fund balance of 6.775 million. So that's a little bit of sizing room that they could play with there. That's a bit more of a conservative sizing there. So these are my observations on these key financing assumptions. Now, 5% coupon rate at a stabilized DSCR of 1.0 times, that really would not be reflective of the municipal bond market today. Similar coupon rates are probably in the 6 to 7s if I'm adjusting to a 1.0 times coverage. One of the reasons why they are these financial plans often just shows that at 1.0 times coverage is just for mathematical convenience. In the real world, if you're going to be issuing bonds, it would be at 1.2 times. So I'm kind of making that adjustment in my head. But if you were to be issuing this today, it'd be in the 6s and 7s. Now, the availability of developer advances for public improvement financing certainly provides flexibility to issue in better bond market conditions. The financial plan anticipates, or at least it shows, the first bond series from the infrastructure districts being issued at year 3 of construction. I'll also highlight that the numerical plan is bonding off of a 15-year build-out. In practice, that would be off of shorter build-out phases. So when you're bonding off of a longer build-out, that's just kind of more inefficient financing from a sizing perspective. So that's a little bit more wiggle room in my eyes, my analysis here. And then finally, to the extent that the development backing these bonds is delivered prior to issuance, lower coupon rates, more comparable potentially to refunding bonds, would also be justified. So this is the refunding and new money issuance here. 10 years later, Series 2038. It would completely refund the Series 2028, which you see over there with the 153.7 million deduction. Also assumes some issuance expenses because it's refunding rated bonds. They're easier to market. The underwriter's discount typically for this would be $5 per thousand, as is shown. And so the net, quote, new money proceeds that counts towards the debt authorization amount is that bottom line there, 111.4 million. December 2068 final maturity. So what this does is it effectively extends the debt levy term to the full 40 years. And again, the service plans have a maximum debt levy imposition term of 40 years. These are the bond feature assumptions for the refunding improvement bonds. The financial plan assumes 4% annual coupon rates, sized at 1.0 times coverage, 30 years investment grade rated, because, well, issuance here is shown as coinciding with final build out, so these bonds would be backed by stabilized and built out revenue stream. Again, 3% bond, so 6% biennial inflation, and a debt levy, at least as shown at the full 55 equivalent mills. My observations about this, well, the assumed coupon rate at 4%, that's generally consistent with similar rated special district refunding bonds over the past decade. Generally, they've ranged from 4% to 5%. Something like this today would probably be selling at 5%. In 2021, when we had Fed zero interest rate policy and really booming housing market, that was historically strong municipal bond market. Refunding bonds were dipping into the threes there, but 4%, that's generally a consistent, reasonable assumption that's used in financial plans. And then finally, that home value appreciation graph, certainly long-term historical rates of property value appreciation have generally exceeded the assumptions of 6% biennial and 2% commercial. And so if this is being sized off of 1.0 times coverage, that's likely a reasonable sizing parameter, because when you're 10 years out, you're probably going to have more property value appreciation than, for example, 2 or 6% every other year. I'm almost done here. I'm switching over to the Water and Sanitation District's debt plan. The financial plan shows one bond issuance in 2024, so that would be prior to commencement of construction. These would be revenue bonds backed by TAP and development fees paid by the developer or the builder. I put that slash there because, in practice, if a builder is paying the TAP fee, that also impacts the price at which the developer can sell the lot. So it really passes on down to the developer. These are not general obligation bonds, no mill levy is authorized, and water and sewer service fees to fund the water and sanitation district's operations. The monthly fees that customers pay, those go towards the water and sanitation district operations. They're not going towards debt financing here. And the sources and uses table here is more simple because there's not a refunding and new money, so the par amount of bonds and then issuance expenses and underwriter's discount. Now, I'm going to break down this table a little bit more in a slide from now. This summarizes the anticipated TAP and development fees in the service plans and the financial plans. I indicated before the total is anticipated at $52,000 per residential unit or residential lot. That's in 2024 dollars. The financial plan shows these fees being inflated by 4.5% annually. That was something that I did initially question because 4.5% hopefully will be lower than CPI inflation in the future, but that's actually consistent with what was formally established for the Independence Water and Sanitation District's fee resolution. So 4.5% inflation is what was underwritten and is occurring with Independence as well. And finally, the commercial side. Commercial ones would probably be based off of tap size. That's kind of a general estimate based off of a 1 or 1.5 inch tap size there. And the developer does anticipate that these tap and development fees would be potentially tiered by lot size or tap size. The financial plan shows the expected averages. Now, going back to really the core question here, which is, does the financial plan demonstrate the issuance and paying off of the full proposed debt authorization amount? The bonds for the Water and Sanitation District, the financial plan shows $135.4 million. And the revenue bond authorization amount is $140 million. So really in our analysis, we asked a couple more questions of ourselves as well as of the applicant about this. So from a technical perspective, if you were to get to the full $140 million, there would need to be some combination of the following. So if you had lower coupon rates on the bonds, you could get to $140 million. If you had faster underwritten build out, you could get it. Or if the tap and development fees are raised by whatever it would be, 4 or 5%, then you could get to $140 million. So again, as the tap and development fees are the only anticipated revenues pledged to these bonds, they're not general obligation. Homeowners from a property tax perspective really aren't exposed to this. In fact, the service plan language explicitly indicates that no property taxes shall be pledged for payment of these bonds. And so if you're asking the question, getting from $135 million to $140 million, that's really, in practice in the real world, if the developer or the district wanted to get to $140 million, then they could raise the tap fees by 4 or 5%. I probably don't need to break this out too much. 30-year bonds here. Actually, this is a fairly important point here. It assumes what's called a, quote, cash flow repayment structure, which I'll explain in a minute. So these bonds would have a 30-year term, but they would pay off at build out, which is projected to be in 2039. And the reason for that cash flow repayment structure means that there are no mandatory principal repayment schedule. So you make annual debt service payments to the extent that you have the revenues available. You may amortize principal at any time to the extent possible. If you have a lot of revenues, you can pay off a lot of revenues. If you don't, then potentially interest could accrue, et cetera. These water and sanitation district bonds do not, in the financial plan though, show much of an accrued interest balance building. Really, the purpose for the cash flow structure for this type of bond is just so that you have flexibility in the future in relation to the phasing and the build out of the project. Now, going back to the bond features here, the water and sanitation district bonds assumes a 6% annual coupon rate, projected payoff in 2039, and tap and development fees, only anticipated revenue backing. Now, from my observation, really these water and sanitation district bonds are not, or at least this specific structure is not a particularly common. It's not a bond issuance that's occurring every day. Largely, the structure is reflective of what was issued by Independence Water and Sanitation District in 2019. I would indicate that those bonds were issued with a coupon rate of 7.25% rather than 6% as shown in the financial plan. Really, I wouldn't have a great idea of what the coupon rate would be on these bonds. Today, I would imagine that investors would take into consideration, for example, the Independence project is the same developer and all of that, so they're potentially a little bit less risk because they're more familiar with the project and the developer's ability to deliver. But again, these are special revenue bonds effectively paid by the developer and the builder. And so if you wanted to get to the $140 million, the toggle you would have would be the TAP and the development fee rates. Now, this is the last component of my presentation. The anticipated water and sewer rates that are shown in the financial plan. I've copied what was shown in what's called a utility rates study or utility rates model that was included in the financial plan. The utility rates model was prepared by the applicant actually based off of the 2022 usage rates by households in Independence Water and Sanitation District. That was really the underpinning of their modeling there. If you take that as a benchmark, that kind of water usage, the financial plan, the utility rates model here shown would put the majority of the households, in certain months probably 60, 70% of the households within the base to the second tier right there, just to give you a feeling of what the potential monthly water and sewer rates would be. And then finally, our observations on the utility rate model. It's not just the water usage, but as well as the operating costs in the utility rate model that's based off of Independence Water and Sanitation District actual data. The utility rate model, actually, I asked the applicant about this as well. The utility rate model is based off of a more conservative build-out rate than what's shown for the bond financing, as well as what the developer anticipates. Based off of that somewhat more conservative build-out rate, and the operating cost assumptions and the household usage patterns, the utility rate model shows that the water and sanitation district their operating budget would go cash positive in year 5, necessitating about $2.2 million in cumulative developer advances for operations. And then by year 9, the district would be generating cumulative net revenue surplus after paying back that developer advance balance. At year 9 would be roughly 55% estimated tap build out shown in that model. And so year 9 there means operational costs are covered and capital replacement reserves are beginning to be generated. So that's kind of the long-term break-even point there. The reason why I indicated 55% estimated tap build-out, that's kind of the build-out point for stabilized and healthy operational budget at these anticipated monthly water and sewer rates. Really, that's the core purpose of the utility rate model, to test whether the anticipated monthly water and sewer rates are going to allow for the district to reach healthy, stabilized operations. Now, I'm not sure if a print copy will go out with this, but I'm not going to break this down, but I have included an appendix of the bond summaries and bond repayment models. This may be more for the benefit of the county commissioners who are more used to seeing things like this, but this is really our attempt to take what may be shown over 5 or 10 or 15 pages in the financial plan and condense it down into 1 or 2 tables. So this is what I have for you tonight. I really appreciate you bearing with me, and if you have any questions, I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time.
That presentation available to the planning commission online, via email or something?
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Thank you.
So at this point, thank you. I believe you folks have a presentation on this also?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll have Diane Miller do our presentation. I think we can get it teed up here. Ours is just a little bit longer.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Diane Miller with the law firm of Miller Law, 1555 California Street, Denver, Colorado. And we are here tonight with regard to the EC West Metropolitan Districts and the EC West Water and Sanitation District. Presentation team tonight includes myself, Jim Yates, sitting next to me, and Lacey Knowles from D.A. Davidson, who is the underwriter who prepared the financial plans for our districts. Oftentimes when we're talking to a commission or a group about, why do we want to have metropolitan districts, it's because given the structure of financing here in Colorado, it allows for growth, new growth in a community to pay its own way. Oftentimes there is no other public entity that is willing, or more important, able to fund public improvements necessary for development. You've seen tonight that the level, the amount of phasing for these improvements is significant. And so districts are one of the ways that we can make sure that financing and public improvements are available when they are needed as development progresses. It does reduce the cost of public improvements through access to low-cost tax-exempt financing. Developers are not able to access these markets. They have to be through local governments. And so metropolitan districts are able to get much better financing terms than a developer would be able to obtain. Also provides for a proportionate impact rather than front-loading the cost of public improvements on a new home. The costs are paid because they're paid via these property mill levies when bonds are issued over a 30-year period. Property owners are only paying for their proportionate share of the improvements while they own property. We know in Colorado that the average person owns a home for 7 years and then moves. Obviously there are people who live in the same home for 40 years, but on average it's a 7-year cycle. And so if you live in a community that has a metro district, you're going to pay that mill levy for the 7 years that you live there. And then when you leave and go somewhere else, you're no longer obligated. So you no longer have the public improvements that you were able to access when you were in the community, but you also don't have the obligation of payments. Finally, go back one more. Taxpayers outside new developments do not contribute taxes to these new developments. The only taxpayers are those who actually own property within the boundaries of the districts. And that is another way we make sure that growth pays its own way for these new developments. Okay, there you go. As Graham mentioned, the estimated cost of public improvements for this project is $637 million. Districts, especially where a project is largely residential, they cannot pay all those public improvement costs. The cost of the improvements usually exceeds the financing capacity of the districts by some percentage. Here, we have a debt limit of both the infrastructure and the water and sand districts of $429 million. So you can see that there's a pretty significant gap there. Those public improvement costs that cannot be paid by the districts remain the obligation of the developer and their responsibility to fund those costs. And finally, it's always important to remind people that the county is not responsible for the costs of these public improvements. They're funded by the districts or by the developer, but there is no debt that the county is required or obligated to pay on behalf of these public improvements. Another question that we often hear or observations that are made is that people think that metro districts are not financially safe, and that it is possible that money issued by a district for public improvements could be misused in some way. It's important to remember that neither the developer nor the district have unfettered access to bond funds when bonds are issued. The money doesn't even go directly to a district, nor does it go to the developer. It goes to a bank with a corporate trust department. And the bank then disperses those funds when the district has been able, through third-party independent engineering review, to show that public improvement costs have been paid and that the cost is appropriate. So it's not like $600 million is going to sit in a district fund somewhere. It will sit in the bank. And the trustee, you should know when bonds are issued, that trustee enters into an agreement not just with the districts so that that money is released when public improvements are verified and the costs are certified, but also with the bond owners. So they have the responsibility of not only working with the districts, but of assuring with the bond owner that the money is being properly used. Districts, when they issue bonds, have a lot of requirements. a continuing disclosure report, which is sent both to the trustee and to the owner of the bonds, that explains how the development is progressing. And those disclosures are also filed on EMMA, the Electronic Municipal Market Access website of the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board. So any member of the public can go on to the emma.msrb.org website, type in the name of the district, and you'll see what will come up is the bonds that have been issued by the district, the basic bond documents, and any notices that have been filed with regard to those bonds once they're issued. The state has also put additional safeguards in place with regard to special districts. There is a statutory disclosure notice to purchasers of property that must be made that discusses the existence of the districts, what their debt limit is, what their maximum mill levy is, and when they were created. The service plan is also an important document for districts. It's on file with the county in this instance. It is on the district's website. And that service plan, not only the document itself exists, but we have to file annual reports to the county that explain what infrastructure has been built, what bonds have been issued, and what the status of development is. Districts in Colorado are now required, every district has to have its own website. And so when you go on to a website for a special district now, you'll see notices of meetings. You'll see all of the organizational documents and records of the district. There has to be contact information, either a district manager or myself, legal counsel, someone that you can contact for more information about the district, information about debt, mill levy, and budget is also put on the website. And finally, election information has to be put on the website so that anyone who is an eligible elector within a district knows when the election is occurring and what positions are available during the election process. Finally, the Colorado Sunshine Laws require that all districts have open meetings that are open to the public. Anyone can attend meetings of a special district. They require regular elections on a every 2-year basis for new directors who are on a split schedule, so that we have every 2 years at least 2 directors being elected and sometimes 3. This year, a new requirement was put in place for special districts, and it's often being referred to now as the town hall meeting, but it's an annual meeting for all residential districts where information concerning the status of public infrastructure, the issuance of bonds, unaudited financial statements are all available for anyone who attends a meeting, really, and the opportunity to ask questions to the board of directors about the districts. We are proposing 8 new districts for EC West. 5 are residential districts, 1 is a commercial, 1 is the overlay metropolitan district, and the water and sanitation district. Exhibit D of the service plan details the engineer's estimate of costs, I should say for the EC West development, and Graham went through that with you in some detail. Again, the estimated financing costs of the public improvements is $429,000. The estimated total cost of all your improvements that will be the responsibility of the developer is about $208 million. Each district can contribute to the overall cost according to its financial ability. Districts may have different number of houses in them. The value of those houses may differ. And so each district will have a proportionate share of the overall cost of the public improvements, and that's true of the commercial property as well. This cost estimate that we're talking about does not include private improvement costs, which are also the responsibility of the developer, and that includes overlot grading, electrical infrastructure, gas infrastructure, and wet utilities serving individual lots. The district is empowered, each of these districts is empowered to construct public infrastructure for the developer. Streets, curbs, gutters, culverts, et cetera, are intended mostly to be done by the infrastructure districts, although to the extent that the water and sewer district might have some small access roads or something that it needs to build, it would be allowed to do that. Storm sewer, flood, and surface drainage facilities, including detention and retention ponds, will likely be a shared cost between the infrastructure districts and the water and sand districts. Water and sewer mains and laterals will likely be done exclusively by the water and sanitation district, along with pump stations, reducing stations. And irrigation facilities may be a shared expense of both the water and sand and the infrastructure districts. Parks, trails, and other amenities will be constructed by the metropolitan districts. The county will take ownership and maintenance of streets outside the development upon acceptance by the county. It's also anticipated that the county will take ownership of streets within the development, but it will be the obligation of the districts to maintain those streets. The overlay district will operate and maintain park and recreation, cultural and recreation amenities and open space. The districts, the infrastructure districts, the water and sanitation districts, and the overlay districts may all contribute to the maintenance of storm drainage improvements and interior streets. And the water and sanitation district will own and maintain all potable and non-potable water facilities, as well as sanitary sewer. Each district, as we said, will contribute proportionally to the financing of infrastructure through the issuance of bonds. Districts 1 through 5 in the commerciall district have a debt limit of $289 million. Once debt is issued by any one of those 6 districts, the overall debt limit is reduced by the amount of bonds issued, so it's not available for use by another district. The maximum mill levy for the districts is 65 mills, which may be adjusted for legislative changes. And the water and sand district anticipates issuing revenue bonds in the amount of approximately $140 million. Water and sand district bonds do not use property taxes for payment. They're paid from tap fees and system development fees imposed on the home builders or the commercial builder. The overlay district does not have any debt capacity. It's meant to act as a maintenance district in lieu of an HOA, so it has an operating mill levy of 15 mills. Our request tonight is for recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission to the Board of County Commissioners. The service plans are anticipated to be heard by the Board of County Commissioners on January 10 of next year. We're here, obviously, to answer any questions that you may have about these districts.
Okay, thank you. So what we'll do, folks want to take a break for a minute? Let's do a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and then we'll go to citizen comments, and then we'll get to our questions. Hope tonight I can get some sleep.
No, it's optional.
get them out of the house is what she did.
Are you an investor in this, or is this your?
No, this is just something my wife got and wanted to, instead of me eating them at home, share them out.
She's so nice.
She's thoughtful that way.
Oh, dang, those are good. Apple pecan pie. Yeah, apple pecan pie. Yeah. Kevin's the candy man.
Oh, the
Him and
candy
Sammy
man.
Davis Jr.
Oh, man. What'd you get?
So I did a thing that you did.
They're fruit with a little bit of nut in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So it's literally a candy, so, but it's soft.
Oh, are they yours? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, in his list, you see legacy, 900 and HOA fees. Yeah. Yeah, but I'm surprised that, some of them have it, some of them don't. Yeah, some of them have it and some of them don't, yeah. So I was just, like I said, the one that jumped out was legacy.
Oh, these are
They're
good.
good, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
That's actually pretty cheap.
That's what?
That's actually fairly cheap. Less than $100 a month for HOA, that's not bad.
Man.
If that was your only
Yes,
assessment.
yeah,
That's not. You're working one of the districts.
yeah.
Man, I had rental properties that, damn, those fees kept going up.
Yeah,
Yeah, they just, man.
yeah.
Mr. Chair, so again, if I, did I share with you the
Okay, we could get, let's get back to it here. All right, I think we're at the point where it's citizen comments on everything that was given. I was wondering, I believe, Marie, yes, comments? No? Is there any other people who have any comments on this? No? Okay, we do have, I was given 2 emails, and they had requested that we provide these in public comment, so I will read these two statements. Dear Elbert County Planning Commission, is directed to us. I am writing to state my support for approval of EC West. I provide mortgages to young families who want to make Elbert County their home, and the EC West community will provide that opportunity. This development will also open doors for the Elbert County first responders, healthcare workers, teachers to live in the community they serve. Elbert County needs these people to live in and care about the community. The craft team consistently demonstrates their strong commitment to Elbert County and its residents. They routinely support programs like Back the Badge, 4-H, and various other programs which benefit the Sheriff's Department, as well as Kiowa and Elizabeth schools, etc. They are not some out-of-the-state developer. They are here in Colorado, and they are committed to Elbert County. Elbert County is a conservative place that believes in capitalism, open commerce, and the ability to achieve the American dream. America was founded on the right to own property. Supporting commerce and growth and home ownership is consistent with our values as a country and as a community. EC West will keep more than 50% of the land as open space. It will guarantee a 300-year water supply, and it has clear economic benefits to Elbert County and its citizens. Please approve the EC West. Thank you for your time. This was submitted by, you need the name, correct? Okay. It's Valerie Cameron. All right. So we have one more. Okay, this was from Dewana Hetzler. Okay, dear Elbert County Planning Commission, as a realtor, I work every day to help families achieve the dream of homeownership, and I am writing to state my support for approval of EC West. EC West will create a community that will make homeownership possible for working families. EC West gives teachers, nurses, firefighters, police officers, and other working families a place to live in Elbert County. These are the very people who make a community, and welcoming those families into Elbert County is good for the county and good for all of its residents. And EC West will take the better part of 2 decades to evolve and fill in, and the craft team will be there every step of the way. They have demonstrated their commitment to the county and its residents time and time again with their supportive programs like the Wood Bank, Food Bank, Back the Badge, and the Sheriff's Department, Kiowa, and Elizabeth schools, 4-H, the Stampede, our community's first departments, etc. EC West will feature some of the craft company's signature development hallmarks. 50% of the land will remain as open space, a certified 300-year water supply, and clear economic benefits to Elbert County and its citizens. It will deliver some much-needed community-serving retail for citizens in our area. With development, especially in a rural community like Elbert County, there will always be questions. But one question that can't be denied is whether growth in Colorado and Elbert County will continue. It will. In the craft companies, Elbert County has a developer who cares about our heritage and our quality of life.
Okay.
That was, I think I stated the name, Dwana Hetzler, New Dawn Realty. Okay. All right. With those comments, do I have anybody else? Okay. At this time, let's open it up. I think we probably have some questions. All right, shall we go around the table here? Go ahead. Start. Dwayne?
Thank you for your time. So I have a few questions, but I may just pick the top three. So one of the exhibits in the plan talked about the, upon request, the county can request a diligence review every 5 years. Am I correct in saying with that?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's only on by request, right?
That is correct. The county
Okay,
has
so
to
if they choose not to do it, other than the oversight that is filed with you or filed with the county annually and with the state as well, your compliance, both for accounting and the other aspects of the districts have to be filed with the state every year.
State auditor.
So one question is that diligence review, are we doing that at the county today? And if that isn't, is that a concern for us?
So the statutory provision is called quinquennial review, and it allows the approving entity, whether it's a county or municipality, to have a district on a 5-year sort of plan from the date it was organized, provide financial information. A lot of what you would see in an annual report anyway, but to the extent that there is a desire for more in-depth financial information, the county could require that. And that statute has been in place for a long time, probably 20 years or more. And I think today, because of the website and the filing of budgets and audits with the state auditor, almost all of that information is available to you on an annual basis anyway. But the provision is still there, and you can still ask a district to either do a public hearing where they give you financial information or just provide something in writing to the county. I have never been asked to do a quinquennial review here or anywhere.
I get that. And is that purely financial,
Yes.
but not operational, right?
Just financial.
Okay. And then on the administrative expense, I think it was about $500,000. Is that include fully burdened labor costs, benefits and all of that stuff with the admin costs?
I do not believe it is anticipated that the districts will have any employees per se, but they may have independent contractors, and it would include those costs.
I gathered that might be a mostly outsourced services,
Yes.
but I didn't know if there was on-staff people that you had to worry about.
No.
Okay, and thank you. Let's see real quick. The overlay district, and I'm speaking about the drainage basins, I think that's the term for it. Drainage basins that the overlay districts would have purview on it. Are those Is that overlay district responsible for ensuring water quality in the basin itself? And I'm not talking about water you provide, but ensuring that drainage is not causing any harm to the drainage basins?
It's probably the Water and Sanitation District that'll be responsible for making sure that water quality meets the standards
Okay, so
set by the state.
with the DWR and
Yes.
the other organization that's responsible for the water quality in that basin,
Yes,
right?
that's correct. Although the Water and Sanitation District is not a stormwater
Yep, I saw that.
entity, it's, right, but it would still be required to meet all of those regulations with the state.
Okay, and that's built in or baked into the costs of
Well-
the operational
Yes,
aspects?
absolutely.
Okay, you know, the testing and
Yes,
all
all
of
the
that, just to
testing and
ensure.
stuff. Yep, and that'll all be done by the Water and Sand District. And,
Okay,
as was discussed last night during the PUD and preliminary plat, the district, the state engineer wants that district because, you know, that is the intersection of where all those regulations hit, and the
Okay.
district can provide that.
thanks for clarifying those things. Let me just take a quick look. On your modeling, your revenue model for the districts, are those, like for the rates, were you using AWWA kind of standards for that? Am I making sense on that? They have recommendations for rate studies and all of that.
I'm not familiar with AWWA.
It's the American Water Works.
Got it. Okay, so
My wife is in water, and she constantly refers to those guys. It's a national association for professionals or organizations in the.
and I believe what you're asking now is the rates that are going to be charged to users within the district. And I'm going to kick this back to Jim Yates, who probably has a little bit more. I thought you might have meant the rates on the bonds. So
Okay, sorry. I'm thinking of that with respects to costing, though. That's it is pertinent to the expense. That's all. I'm just trying to understand how those revenues were derived.
So the revenue, and I think Graham actually touched on this, the revenue information that we provided to him is actual rates and costs and all of that combined from Independence. So since we're basically running a similar system, that was our best
That's a nice
basis of information to provide with that.
I think that'll do it for me. Thanks for your responses.
I just had one question. In the presentation yesterday, you guys indicated that even though you would turn the roads, et cetera, over to the county, that you would still maintain them. But in this presentation, it says that the county's going to maintain those roads.
Sorry, that may have been confusing. The county will take ownership and maintenance of roads outside the development, but not any of the internal roads within the development.
Okay, well, that wasn't clear.
Oh, okay, so I
Yeah.
apologize.
It
But like
just said,
the county
you know, that the
roads,
county would
right.
own the roads and they would maintain them, but yesterday indicated that even though you would turn the roads over to the county, you would still maintain them, but it didn't say anything about in the development or where, so. I just assumed it was everything. So.
Yeah, and again, just to restate that, the district, I think the intent was the district will be the one to maintain the roads. The district will have an agreement with the county on.
To do that, yeah.
And what
That's fine.
standards and all of that to follow.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just needed some clarification there because
Yes.
I was seeing two different things, so, thank you.
Yes.
So it's my day for dumb questions, so I have a litany of them. I'll start with the easy one, right? So Tim Kraft, Colorado Ranch and Land Holdings, why are they incorporated out of Delaware and not Colorado?
We have an equity partner that is a part of the ownership.
Is that a foreign entity?
Is not a foreign entity.
Okay, thank you. The second dumb question is, when is the first house going to be landed in the community? It looks like 2025 when the first house lands, and that's when you start realizing a return on the investment. Is that accurate?
That, as far as we can tell today, that's accurate. We anticipate getting through entitlement the first half of next year and starting water, wastewater kind of infrastructure process.
Yeah, that's
And
where
then
I'm going,
into
actually.
25, we'll develop lots and sell lots to builders. So I think by the end of 25, they'll start having occupied homes.
Good. That's where I was going. I was looking at it going, okay, so when are you going to start the wastewater and water treatment? Because that's going to be a significant investment. And there wasn't a lot of discussion about when that lands in the plan. I look at things on a linear scale, and I was looking for something that said, here's where you're going to start, but I didn't really see that.
Yeah, so we will invest in kind of the first phase. Why it wasn't part of this is the metro districts are not anticipated to issue bonds until there's enough infrastructure in the project that it takes the risk down and theoretically gets a better interest rate on the bonds.
So when you start landing roads and start putting in the facilities themselves, that's when they'll mature or be realized.
Correct. It's easier, the more built out you become, the easier it is to issue bonds. And so we kind of have this initial investment and we'll issue bonds once we get lots sold to builders, once we get, some homes started. That's, and again, I think Graham mentioned this earlier, but right now is not a great bond market. And so we'll kind of monitor that. If it returns sooner, then we'll look at issuing those bonds sooner, but we have a plan to basically get into our first phases without that public financing.
And so my next dumb question is, why the complexity of how you've structured you've got the overlay and then you've got 5 metro districts. What's the plan there? Is that to break out the cost of the build out through those? How is that structured?
So
why is it structured that way?
So basically, we need a water and sand district. We need a commercial district separate because the assessments are different, and we have to kind of match.
The 5 are literally about the homes and home ownership there.
Right. So the metro districts 1 through 5 are really just about phasing. So that we'll use those to phase through the community. The overlay, from a developer's perspective, is really to not have any one amenity kind of overburden a particular district. So if, like, all our amenities were in District 1, they would, kind of carry the debt. The overlay allows each of those 5 districts to pledge their mills up and then kind of, spread like peanut butter the cost over the whole community. So all of our amenities are open to all of the community within as well as without. But as far as those paying from within, they're all paying the same, even though the rec center might be in Village 2 and I live in Village 1 or something like that.
Got it. And so the overlay also acts like, smells like, operates like a homeowners association.
It does.
Okay.
It has more, a few more tools in its kit to kind of manage the community, but it will perform many of those types of functions.
Okay, thanks. I did a little bit of math. I cheated a little bit. It was like 360, give or take a few million that your builders and developers are going to have to pay just as table stakes to get in the game, I guess. Is that common?
I would say it is common on a project of this scale. The reality is that 300 million is going to get paid, 30 million, 10 bites of the apple. It's going to get phased and go through and then sell lots, recoup some, do it again, sell lots, recoup some. So it's certainly, it's not physically possible for us to kind of go in and literally develop the whole thing at the same time. So it'll be, bites of the apple.
Yeah, here's a big check, let's go get started.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work.
And we don't want that big check to sit there and run interest and not spend it.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Good? Mike, go ahead.
Just real quick on a material change or modification to a plan, it would need to go through the county commissioners.
Yes, material modifications of the service plan, if they're brought forth by the district, go through the same process as we use for the initial approval. So it goes both through Planning Commission and then to the Board of County Commissioners.
Can you give me an example of what one of those?
Typically, we're doing, there's a couple reasons we would do a material modification. One is if for some reason there's a change to how we're looking at financing. And that could be, it could be outside forces that, cause us to look at the financing and say we need to change this. And because we've told you we're going to finance in a particular way and we want to do something else, we would have to bring that back to you. It could be that we wanted to change how the amenities were provided. Or sometimes it's a question of being empowered to do something that a district wasn't empowered to do before. And an example of that is that districts didn't used to be able to do security services within their boundaries. That's something that changed in the statute. And when it did, oftentimes we went back with our service plans and asked the approving jurisdiction to allow us, to then implement security. But I would say the most common is a change in financial conditions that would cause the district to want to change its financing plan.
Now, on timing, number D on page 12, it says all those things you just mentioned are not material modifications. How does it?
No, they are. They would be material modifications.
Okay. I'm reading this wrong. I can read it if you'd like. I could be misunderstanding it as well.
Page of a service plan, Lacey. Any of the metro districts.
It's timing number D, or not number D, but letter D.
Oh, okay, that provision. All that provision says is if the developer group decides that they're going to build houses in 2026 instead of 2025, that is not a material modification of the service plan. Districts don't initiate development. We just respond to it. So this is meant to say that as the development progresses, the timing may be different than what you see in the service plan for when the first house is going to be built or when the first bonds are going to issue. Those are not material modifications of the service plan.
Gotcha. Because I understand phasing and scheduling and different things, but it says you also may forego, and it says restructure the financing. So that's a little confusing.
So when we say restructure the financing, we've shown a model for these service plans, for example, that showed 2 phases of bonds being issued. It could be that in 5 years, our underwriter says, we think you should chunk these out into 3 phases of bond financing. As long as we're not changing the overall debt limit or the mill levy, we would be able to do that without it being a material modification.
Okay, thank you.
The advantage of metro districts in a fluctuating economy. you guys got that? I think you covered all that. Because I wanted to see, and it's the staggering the issue of bonds so that, you don't, okay. That was the first thing. Who in the county is reviewing this? Do we go to outside attorney?
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, what was the question?
Who in the county, it's not our attorney, is it an outside representative, outside law firm? Who is reviewing the service plan?
Yes, we have an outside firm, Butler Snow,
Okay,
that
okay,
does the legal analysis.
okay, all right, that was the question. Thank you, Mark. One of the things that's gonna come up, and when you go forward, one of the big questions that seems to come up is, do you involve people in the community in your metro districts? Because it seems, I think it came up in questions in Independence. Well, will the community be involved in managing the metro districts?
Absolutely. Metro districts are local governments, and so the mechanism that is set up is that as time goes on, as people actually move into one of our districts and buy a house, they are eligible to sit on the board of directors.
Okay.
And eventually, homeowners and residents or owners of commercial property will manage all of the districts.
Okay, that question will come up. That seems to really,
I just want to add to that. So Independence, their districts are about 3 years into their existence, and the District 1, which is over the first filing, has two residents? Three of a 5 board already
Board
on
members.
it.
actually board members on
Actual board members on that now.
Okay.
So they actually have a
Okay.
majority of their metro district today, and the overlay district has 2 then as
Okay.
well, 2 of the 5. And that's simply just timing of turning over the terms. We start because we're the only landowners initially, we being the developer. And then as soon as a resident is a landowner, buys a home, they are eligible at the next election cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I didn't know that. I'm glad to hear that, because that seems to really frustrate people when they can't be involved in the management of it. And it sounds like that's not the case. So,
Correct.
Can you give me an idea, the performance of metro districts in the metro area? How many metro districts are currently operating? I was hoping you might have a number, metro area, statewide.
There are over 2,400 metropolitan districts in the state of Colorado.
Okay, and how much has it grown in the last, let's say, 5 years, Steve? And it, no?
A lot.
Okay.
Yeah, Graham, do you happen to know?
I do not know specifically, but in updating one of my presentations, I think, I'm sorry, I'm giving a blank stare into space here. I think about 250 have been formed since January of this year, 250 or 300 or so.
Wow.
Now, that's not necessarily active projects. Someone could just be formed, and of course, that's also not necessarily the number of projects, because we have multi-district projects as well. But yeah, I would concur with Diane that the answer would be a lot.
When I first started practicing in this area, which was 28 years ago, there were less than 700 districts in the state of Colorado. So it's grown
Okay.
4 times.
Okay, so it's growing. Okay. Last question I have, I hate to go back to road maintenance, but this goes back to, you stated county wants to own the roads and you maintain them
That's correct.
within the area.
Within the development.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. I think they want to own all the roads, internal and external. They want us to maintain internal.
Okay, now,
That-
when they want you to maintain them, does that mean actually going into replacement?
Yes, that,
Okay,
that is part of, I think, the presentation. One of those slices in there is we will have to build that over time.
okay, because 20-year lifespan, are you on the hook to replace those with,
Repair and replace.
okay, all right. Okay, that's the last of my questions. Okay. All right, do you have any more questions? Okay. Well, call for a vote.
I make a motion that we recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners.
Microphone, please.
I make a motion that we recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that they approve agenda item number 2023-1927. This is the EC West service plans.
Got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Around the table? Dwayne? Aye. Dan?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, did you get that? You got the second?
Robert politics. I did. Yep.
And did you get the vote? Okay, ayes? Is that Mike? Mike was a nay. Yes. Okay. All right, folks, at this time, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Kim. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too. And Courtney was on too.